Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Let's Create, where I'm just showing you some stuff I made for a convention I recently stored at, known as Overload. Which for non-New Zealanders, it's basically like the biggest convention in New Zealand, solely dedicated to anime and manga. But there is also other mediums you can find there as well, especially in the Artist Alley that has a mixture of original pieces as well as fan art for multiple different stuff that isn't exactly anime related. It's not as big as Armageddon, which is the biggest convention we have here, but it's still very nice and I absolutely loved being part of the Artist Alley for this year. This was my second time ever tabling at a convention. The first was Armageddon last year, and I was completely blown away by the awesome cosplay I saw, and it was nice to talk to people that came up to my store. I have to say, compared to my first store where I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, I felt that my table was a lot more cohesive and I kind of knew what worked better than previously. I just want to clarify that this has nothing to do with the fact I was tabling with someone else for my first convention. We both knew jack all about what we were supposed to do, and heck, we didn't even know how to properly fill out the forms required just to get a table. Now that we kind of have the knowledge and are aware of what works and what doesn't, we have a far better table setup for our upcoming convention that we will both be at. Now, I figured besides showing what I made for my recent convention, I'd also share what I've learned from my experience. I'm not an expert. I've only done like 2 conventions, so if you're wanting expert or more detailed advice, I would browse YouTube for it. Anyways, at my recent convention, I was part of an artist rally that was Final Fantasy themed, so I figured I would just make a print of Zack and Cloud. Now, if I have to say which merch is probably the easiest to make to sell at an artist alley, it's definitely art prints. It's the most common merchandise you'll see at conventions, and oftentimes they're just tables that are solely dedicated to this merchandise. So when you finish making an art print design, you can either go to a printing place or a manufacturer to make copies for you. Alternatively, you can also print it off at home, but I will like to warn you that the type of paper you use will affect the quality. Regular office paper is just not something I would recommend, especially for very color heavy designs. It's just not thick, and I would recommend printing on paper that's at least above 100 GSM. I personally use paper that's above 200 GSM, but you also have to consider the maximum paper thickness your printer can actually print on. Now, the type of finish is honestly up to you. There's matte, gloss, satin, semi-gloss, and probably more I don't even know of. I know some people like to print on gloss and then spray or laminate a matte finish, but either way, just make sure to research the type of paper you want to use and from the different companies that provide these types of papers. Obviously, we can't talk about home printing without talking about the printer. If you're trying to not spend a lot of money, it might at first make a whole lot of sense to get like the cheapest or cheap printer, but generally most printers are on the affordable side to begin with, and trust me, it's not the price of the printer you should be worried about. The most expensive part of the printer is actually the ink, because you're going to be constantly buying it in order to replace or refill what you've used. For my first convention, I spent so much on ink because my art prints would just suck up all the ink from my cartridges. Since then, I have changed to an Eco Tank because not only does the ink last way longer, the refills are just cheaper. Granted, I will say that my older printer made my prints a lot more saturated, but I would rather have art prints that are just slightly less saturated than spend, so much money on ink cartridges that barely last. Also, for recommendations of a printer you would want, I would recommend the Epson Eco Tank ET1810. Some of my art peers use it and their prints turn out pretty good. But because art prints are the easiest to make, they will also be the most common type of merch that you'll see at any convention. And with so much to choose, people can't buy everything, not only because of budgets, but also because prints take up wall space. Generally, from what I've sold, smaller prints tend to sell a lot more because they don't take up as much space. For bigger prints, especially for A3 or A2, they definitely have to be the kind that will just wow your audience for them to buy it. From what I've seen, A2/A3 landscape seems to be pretty popular, but honestly, I would stay away from big size prints unless you know your designs are going to sell pretty dang well. Generally though, most people buy a few prints and then buy smaller stuff that is more compact and easier to store or display. Which leads me into stickers. I decided to add on to my collection of Final Fantasy VII stickers that I made last year, and also wanted to make some sticker sheets. So I think around February or March, I bought myself a silhouette specifically for my stickers. Prior to this machine, I was hand cutting all my stickers, which if you're doing a few it's fine, but when you're going through multiple designs and sheets, your wrist is going to murder you. The other issue with hand cutting is that not every cut is going to be the same or similar. Comparing my hand cut ones to my machine cut ones, you can see that the edge on my machine cut ones are a lot more smoother, but also a bit more uniform and precise. The benefit of a cutting machine like a silhouette is that you can do kiss cut, which is basically where you don't cut the sticker paper all the way through, but just enough that's only the adhesive part. In addition to stickers, you can also cut other things. I recently just discovered my printer could not only print on magnet paper, but also that my silhouette could cut through it. Obviously, machines like these are not cheap, so if you're starting off, I would definitely recommend just hand cutting your stickers. You don't want to spend way too much on your first convention just because it is the stepping stone to let you know how it feels and a great way to observe the way other artists display their stuff or the stock they have. Other reasons are because you may not end up liking it and you'll be left with a ton of stock and equipment you'll probably never use again. But most importantly, please, please, please do not expect to break even on your first convention or even the few following conventions. Profit is great, but it should not be the main aim for the first few conventions, and regardless of whether you make profit or not, you should always have fun being at an artist alley. Anyways, back to hand cutting stickers. Make sure you do it in a way where your wrists will not cramp and take plenty of breaks. If you're wanting to not hand cut stickers, wanting kiss cut stickers, or just don't have the proper equipment or material to print out designs, you can go with a manufacturer to do this for you if you're willing to spend a bit more. There are a ton of sticker manufacturers online that you can use, but do bear in mind that some are a lot more expensive than others for like similar quality or even worse quality. Now, I can't personally recommend you which manufacturers to use for stickers just because I've never had to order them in. But from what I've observed with my peers, Vogue seems to be the most beginner friendly and also the most accessible Chinese manufacturer, as they do have their own website. Speaking of Vogue, you can also order keychains from them. They manufacture a ton of different things, but they're mostly well known for the stickers and keychains. Another manufacturer you can look at is Juno Creative. I've ordered a few from them and I really liked the quality, although they do tend to make the colors on your design a bit darker, and this is very noticeable for very dark colors. The other downside is that they don't have their own website, so you'll have to go through Alibaba to order from them. There are also more manufacturers out there, but these are the only two I have experience with. Also, tip, if you can and you want to save money, try to find people you can group order with. Generally, the price per unit for the same listing gets discounted the more that's ordered, and you can also divide shipping costs. You can also technically make your own keychains. I've seen some flat laminated ones, wood and shrink plastic ones. Basically, there are other types of keychains that aren't just acrylic or epoxy. There's plenty of videos of homemade keychains on YouTube that you can look at. If you have the time and knowledge, this is one way to go about it, but I personally prefer just ordering them in. If you do go this route, please make sure to follow all appropriate safety procedures for dealing with certain materials, especially with resin. Another type of merch that you can also consider are button pins. You can order them in from manufacturers like Vogue or hire out a pin maker to make the button pins. I actually bought a pin maker to make 32mm button pins just because I did not want to go out and about just to hire a machine. Easier access for me, and most importantly, saving money in the long run. I personally would not recommend this if you're starting out and don't plan on committing to a pin maker unless you know your buttons are going to be like bestsellers, or if button pins are something you want to sell at every single convention, because the best sellers from my button designs were only these two. Just hire a pin maker or order them in from a third-party manufacturer, because once the pin maker arrives, it's stuck with you for the rest of your life and can be a bit of a pain to store if you have no storage space. And finally, one more merchandise I made was bookmarks. Pretty self-explanatory. You can either order them in, print them out yourself, or heck, even traditionally make designs on a thick piece of paper. I just did like 3 black and white designs for both matte, card, and watercolor paper. I just had them as a free item that people could get when they ordered $15 or more worth of merchandise. And yeah, that's basically all the merch I currently have. My last couple of other tips is honestly to always ask for help from other people in the community that do Artist Alley. Just like I did, I would highly recommend doing your first conventions with someone else. Not only because you can split the cost of the table, but you can have someone else looking after your stuff when you go away for a bit. If you can't or don't want to share with another artist, I highly recommend getting a helper. Bed sheets are pretty good for covering your table, and I would recommend looking at cue grids for your displays. For storage, accordion folders are pretty good for prints. Stackable storage boxes with dividers are pretty good for things like keychains and pins. For stickers, I'm currently using the stackable storage box, but I have been thinking of looking into folders with card sleeves. For payment, cash and bank transfers are going to be your best friends for like almost every single convention. For FPOS or PayWave, getting a Wattpad is an option, but it's completely optional. And for any New Zealanders watching this, get a Henry account. It's going to be your best friend in taxing your self-income and a great way to upload any expenses that contribute to your little business ventures. Please follow the tax laws of your country because you do not want to get into severe trouble or get slapped with a massive fine. Most importantly though, do not undervalue your stuff. You put the time and effort into making them, spending the money for them, and deserve to be fairly paid for it. If you're stuck on how to price your stuff, just observe how other artists price theirs when you go to your next convention. Anyways, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, or leave your thoughts and opinions. But until next time, see ya!